Oh, Joel. Everything's fine. Nothing to see here. Your feature presentation is a film called I Accuse My Parents. You figure it out. Enjoy it with the short about truck farming.
This time we watch Season 5, Episode 7, I Accuse My Parents.
The one where a young man accuses his parents.
Oh, and it's got a short, The Truck Farmer. But first, Chris, have we got any follow-up?
Yeah, we got a few pieces of follow-up from last time, including a few people wanted to tell us about some other familiar faces in the previous episode, and some people wanted to share their experiences of what weird things happened to their body after they gave birth to a person.
That's right. I was not very descriptive about that whole thing, was I? It's a little traumatic to remember all the things.
Oh, dear. Well, either way, those were both lovely pieces of feedback to get. But I think instead, we're going to talk a little bit about the thing that's happening over at Dumb Industries.
Oh.
The good folks who produce the Mads, you know, Frank and Trace riffs and movies, where they've got the Mary Jo Peel Show, etc. They've been putting these all on Twitch and occasionally on YouTube, and now they're setting up their own little clubhouse where you pay them every month, and then you can watch them in a special place and watch replays of them. And if you're paying them enough, you can watch things on demand. And that seems kind of interesting.
Nice.
Here's the thing. I'm curious to see if this is going to be more successful than the Gizmoplex was, because I get a sense that the people who make these shows have a better sense of how this kind of thing works than the people who did the Gizmoplex seem to have.
You mean like having a subscription service instead of a like Kickstarter, like pay it once?
Yeah, and a sense of like how to make new compelling content on the cheap by having, you know, things happen more often and having a sort of a team of people making stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it'll be curious to see where this goes. So we'll have a link in the show notes to check it out.
Yeah, it'll be nice to see if this is something that is a much more successful thing with a subscription service, whether that'll also influence whatever new offering they might make through the Gizmoplex. Because in my heart, I still want a season 14.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. It feels like they're thinking with a very different model of how to make shows. But we'll see. Maybe they'll figure something out. Well, we should talk about the movie. Now, this is technically, I know it's coming out a little bit late, but it's technically our Labor Day episode. And we are not this time around celebrating anything to do with Hercules, the original Dodeca Laborer, because we have simply run out of Hercules and Hercules adjacent films.
Man, maybe season 14 could give us more.
Maybe. But instead, we're celebrating that other thing that we associate with Labor Day, which is going back to school.
Oh, it's totally what I associate with Labor Day. I mean, as a kid, I always went back to school right after Labor Day, but it seems like now so many schools across the country in the U.S. go back to school in August, and Labor Day is just like their first holiday or something. Did you go back to school like right after Labor Day, Chris? Was that when your first day of school was? Do you remember?
It was sometime after Labor Day. I don't think it was immediately after sometimes, but I don't know. We also had hurricanes, and those often landed around Labor Day. So I remember getting delayed a few days because of that sometimes. But yeah, I definitely didn't start in August. That didn't happen. No, thank you. No, I simply would refuse.
It's fair enough. I mean, it seems like they're trying to have school start in fall so that they can have all of the kids on the farms, right, originally, like doing the labor during the summer. And then they could go back to school in order to do the schoolwork when it wasn't that time to be labor intensive on the farm. But all of that seems so weird to me because there's so many things that get harvested in September. Shouldn't we start school in October, everyone?
Well, thank goodness this episode ties together farming and schoolwork. Let's talk about it. This time we watch Season 5, Episode 7, I Accuse My Parents.
But first, a short, The Truck Farmer. In the pioneering days, folks traveled across the country with meat and staples and very little else. But now in a modern world, we have so much more available to us, even during the harsh winter. States in the southern half of the U.S. with decent farming land plant and provide the vegetables that balance your diet. Our short today gives us a view of how this happens. Chemicals and cheap farm labor. Oh, and machinery. Lots of farming machines. If I were to chart the progress of what's shown throughout this short, it would look like this. Cheap labor, machines, chemicals, cheap labor, chemicals, cheap labor, machines, and cheap labor, chemicals, machine and cheap labor, packing machines, and ice. No, not that ice, the frozen kind. All to get the veggies America refuses to eat enough of to our grocery stores. The end.
And now for our feature presentation. Jimmy is a senior in high school, and he's a pathological liar. At first, this seems to be working out for him. He writes an essay about how wonderful his parents are, and it wins a big prize. But of course, it's all a lie. His parents are alcoholics who are cruel to each other and who completely ignore Jimmy. Jimmy gets a job as a shoe salesman and falls in love with his very first client, a nightclub singer named Kitty, who is also a pathological liar. For example, she doesn't mention that she's also hooking up with her boss, Mr. Blake. Mr. Blake is a professional pathological liar, which is to say he's a criminal and a grifter, trading in illicit goods or something, I don't know. But anyway, Mr. Blake doesn't like that Jimmy and Kitty are getting close, and so he hires Jimmy to help him commit a bunch of crimes. But he doesn't tell Jimmy that they're crimes because, liar. So it's a huge surprise to Jimmy when Mr. Blake's goons start going after him. And the cops are on his trail too. So Jimmy hightails it out of town and ends up in a diner run by Al. Al is the only likable character in the movie. And so, of course, Jimmy holds up his diner at gunpoint. But Al talks him out of it. He even offers him a job and room and board. Only catch, Jimmy's got to go to church with him. Well, could be worse. After a while, Jimmy's ready to go back home and confess to his crimes, but he's only going to do it if Mr. Blake goes down with him. Well, Jimmy storms Mr. Blake's office and confronts him, and there's a tussle, and Jimmy accidentally shoots Mr. Blake with Mr. Blake's gun. This leads to a whole trial where Jimmy flat out accuses his parents of being the source of all the evil in the world, or at least in his world. And the judge more or less agrees. The end.
Meanwhile, on the satellite of love, Tom finds himself with a deep need to be a real boy. Crow, ever the artist, has painted him with nude paint. It's a soft pink, in case you're wondering. Joel tells him it's the Pinocchio syndrome, and I find it a little depressing that sentient machines want to be people. Invention Exchange finds Dr. Forrester and TV's Frank introducing a Bake a Person in a Cake kit. Now you two can combine baking and objectifying the human body into one at-home activity. I mean, I already have a penis-shaped cake tin, but this is bigger. Unfortunately, Frank bakes the human right into the cake, which is not what the directions recommend. They're going to spend the rest of this episode digging that exotic dancer out of that sponge cake prison. Joel and the bots are here with an invention that organizes your junk drawer, so all these miscellaneous items are that much easier to find. I feel like the junk drawer is a reoccurring theme for the show. Abe Vigoda? Not in Joel's junk drawer, though. Alas. After Jimmy in the movie has thoroughly begun his accusation of his parents, we pause for a little art therapy to mitigate the effects of seeing such dysfunction. Joel has asked the bots to draw their ideal family. Crow draws a mega dad with fire laser nipples and a mustache. Tom's got two moms and a giant robot dad. And GPC's art shows her family, Tom, Crow, Cambot, and Joel, holding hands and watched over by Richard Basehart. All three of these are pretty darn ideal, each in their own way. There sure are a lot of ways to make a family. Are you happy in your work? GPC sings as she walks around the lounge that the Satellite of Love has become. Tom and Crow play waitstaff that she interacts with as she sings, just like Kitty in the movie. And Joel wears a series of silly mustaches and wigs to show different patrons at their tables. You'll be happy in your work if you're in love. GPC hearts Richard Basehart, who is not in this movie, but surely makes her happy in her work. We're about halfway through the movie, and our satellite residents are wondering if Jimmy's parents truly are the root of everything that's gone wrong for him. So they break out the whiteboard and talk it through. Are his parents the root of his excessive lies? His life of crime? The whiteboard is unclear, so we must look at a mobile of his shame. Oh, look, there's not just his drunk parents dangling above. There's also his Pinewood Derby car, bad haircut, original sin, and so much more. The movie's over, and I don't think we have a definitive answer from the judge about the root of Jimmy's behavior, but we know why Tom and Crow pull a gun and then a tank on Joel and demand hamburgers and fries. It's the movies. I accuse the movies. And remember the Mads? Yeah, they got that guy out of the cake. And just in time. What do you think, sirs?
People love this episode. Did you love this episode, Charlotte?
This is a really good episode, Chris. What about you? Did you love this episode?
Of course. Let me tell you. Are You Happy in Your Work has been living rent-free in my head for however many decades this episode has been around.
Oh my gosh, me too!
It's the sort of thing that you sort of, at least I, sing to myself when I have to do dishes or something. Just like, are you happy?
Does it help you to be happy with your dishes washing, or does it make you resentful? Because it could go either way.
I mean, it bides the time until death comes and takes me. You know, that's all I ever ask of music.
Oh, well, in that case, success.
Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun to revisit. I was very glad that it stuck with me. I watched this episode with my husband who hadn't seen it before, and he sometimes gets a little bit, a little anxious about plots when they start getting tense. And
I can only imagine this was like the worst for him, right?
No, there's definitely been worse, but this still got pretty bad, especially when they got to the diner scene.
Oh, no.
I think he was convinced that scene was going to go way darker than it did.
It very well could have. I mean, yeah.
It could have.
I mean, we could have been in court for the death of Al rather than the death of Mr. Blake, and that would have been a much more bleak movie.
Exactly. But, we were saved that. This movie definitely knows how to pull its punches occasionally.
I guess so. I don't know. This poor Jimmy, he just seems to blah, blah, blah all his way through life. Sure, I'll do the thing. Sure, I'll get caught in every single scheme of all of these naughty people around me. Why not? I mean, they call him stupid and they call him dumb, which is not quite fair, but he really is quite naive.
Yes, that's. I think that's what they mean when they say that. But fair enough to draw that distinction.
I think it's important,
Sure. Either way, he makes some foolish choices, which he refuses to take too much accountability for.
It's tough. And then, of course, who should be accountable in the end? It's interesting that he chooses to accuse his parents and not his girlfriend or Mr. Blake or, I don't know, the guy who owns the shoe store, right? There's so many people who are oblivious to the criminal side of, little Jimmy.
I feel like if there's one person that we don't need to accuse of anything, I mean, Al's pretty great, but The guy who runs the shoe shop also is
Okay.
blameless, except for kind of vaguely lurking menacingly in the background for no good reason.
Yeah, those were some creepy looks he was giving to Kitty's feet, but no more creepier than Jimmy's, I suppose.
Ah.
I can't believe Jimmy's hand also increased her shoe size by 2. Like, that's a huge difference in shoe size. His hand is not that thick.
Well, we'll get into that later, I believe.
We're going to get into his thick hands? Oh, Chris, where is this episode going?
Well, it's going to Math Town eventually, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
I love Math Town. Woo-woo! Let's go.
Did you enjoy the short as well?
The short was fine. I enjoyed their riff of the short quite a bit because the short just seemed like, let's show you some pictures of farmers doing farmer things and people working on farms, and let's look at the machinery. I mean, it's the kind of thing that my kid, when he was like 3 or 4, would have loved watching, right?
Oh.
In the same way that he loved watching movies that were just movies of trains. Like, not Thomas the Tank Engine, like rolling his eyes and going, woo, woo, Sir Topham Hatt. Like, straight up just a video of a train going down tracks.
Yeah.
For hours. He used to love watching those things. And this short reminded me of that. There really wasn't a narrative purpose. I mean, they put on like a ridiculous narrative framing, this is how we get vegetables in the middle of winter. And it's like, okay, but that's not really what this short is about.
Now, without checking our notes or anything like that, maybe you already have, maybe you know the answer. Which do you think is older, this movie or the short?
Oh, the movie. The movie?
The answer is kind of complicated.
Oh, God. Well, then why did you just ask me for a single answer? You totally baited me. You bait and switched me. All right, tell me the real story.
Well, let's let a little jingle play and then we'll get into it. So you might remember that this is not introduced as The Truck Farmer. It's introduced as The Truck Farmer Second Edition.
Yes, the screen says second edition, but they say special edition. So is it second, or is it special, or is it both?
It's definitely much more second than it is special.
So what about the first edition?
The first edition came out in 1939, which is indeed before this movie came out in 1944.
Okay.
And also, unsurprisingly, before the second edition came out in 1954. I tracked down the original version of The Truck Farmer, which isn't too hard to find. We'll have a link in our show notes.
Okay. Were you thinking the first edition was going to be real different?
I was curious to see how different it was and what they changed and try to think about why they might have changed it. And here's the thing. The first edition is kind of different, but it's largely the same footage.
Okay. So it's just the narration that they changed?
Yeah. And also it's not just narration. There's a whole... Well, I don't want to say there's a whole plot, but there is more plot.
Okay.
So, there's a different narrator doing different narration, but also a lot of the shots are accompanied by... All right, it's clear that they didn't film it with sound and that they just dubbed over people's mouths moving.
Okay.
It doesn't quite line up. It's a delightful choice that most of these kinds of films don't make. But it does have a bit of a plot of a guy from Minnesota who happened to be in Texas and decides to ask a local farmer how these vegetables get up north.
Okay.
And we learn all about the farmer story. He's originally from Ohio, but they were selling off farmland down in Texas real cheap. He bought 30 acres, headed down to Brownsville.
Nice. Brownsville sounds brown.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Brownsville was named after a guy named Brown, but maybe it is just because everything's real brown down there.
I don't know.
I never thought about it. He talks about how he has to, the irrigation. He talks about how he buys that off an irrigation company, paying for what he uses, which I don't think shows up in the second edition.
No, they only talk about irrigation as one of the ways that they support the farmland in an area that doesn't have enough rainfall in order to grow the crops.
Exactly. And so some of that might have changed, like some of the information about how irrigation happens might have changed. And they might have been wanting to update that for the second edition, 15 years later, who knows?
Fair enough.
There's also a whole bunch about how the farmer markets his crops.
Wow.
Like he's deciding when would be a good day to sell based on how cabbages are doing right now.
Oh, that's real different.
Yeah, and he's got like a family, and we cut to his family where they're talking about this, and then Junior, his teenage son, is thinking about buying some land with his friends, and all the family's like, oh, you got to watch out for this, that, and the other thing when you do that. Make sure it's actually arable, I guess.
Oh my gosh. So it sounds like the first edition is more like a farmer's perspective of the whole process of planting and irrigating and farming and then selling the crops, rather than this is an industrial complex that helps to bring food to your table.
Well, it sort of opens up into that because we do get all of the people laboring in the fields and all of the discussion around that. Although I will say the first version is even more interested in how cheap Mexican labor is, and specifically highlights a boy working in the field who looks about 12 and talking about how cheap he is and how he lives across the border and he's just brought in for these special occasions to harvest and all that. It is not showing the sensitivity that we might expect today, which is interesting.
Yes. It's not showing it as a fraught issue like we will acknowledge it is today, but has always been. I mean, the short that we have just talks very briefly about laborers coming across the Mexican border in order to work on a work permit.
Yeah, so we get this really interesting move from the original version is yeah, you can exploit this cheap labor, isn't that great? To the second edition, which is there's labor. We're not going to talk too much about the specifics of it. Joel and the bots being that labor is so cheap and exploitative.
Yeah. Or it's $1 billion industry, but these people won't see any of it.
Exactly. Something that was sort of earnest in the first edition becomes something that is being made fun of as not being talked about in the riff, which I thought was really quite interesting.
Yeah, agreed. I was glad that they were bringing that sort of thing up because so much, when I thought about the short afterwards, it was they showed a lot of chemicals and a lot of machines. And then when I went back to watch it in order to chart what we were looking at, it's like 70% labor that they're showing. 70% of what they're showing about what actually makes the farm viable and productive is labor, people's labor, even with the machines and the chemicals inside of that.
Exactly, because they had all that footage and they talk about it more in the narration the first time around, but they don't talk about it as much anymore.
It's interesting to think of this in a classroom because given the very, very different way that they're talking about farming or presenting farming, it's amazing the discussions that would have happened in a classroom or what they're trying to teach a child based on what the movie is showing them, right? The first movie's trying to teach them what a farmer is and what a farmer's concerns are and what a farmer has to take into account. Whereas the second one is all about, here's how we make massive amounts of food to ship to all parts of this country in the US. And, all about the chemicals and the machines and how cool the chemicals and machines and labor. P.S. There's labor too. It's really interesting how differently that's being presented.
Absolutely. The first edition considers the possibility that you might want to become a farmer. And in the second edition, you are strictly a consumer.
Yep.
You are somewhere out there in America enjoying these products. And you should probably know a little bit, but not too much about where they come from. So that was one of the things I wanted to bring up about today's episode. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was that this movie, I Accuse My Parents, the Mads have only gone and watched it again.
Wow.
Trace and Frank just decided to sit through this and come up with entirely new jokes about this movie. Oh, boy.
Yep, they certainly did. Well, I mean, to be fair, they didn't get to be in the theater the first time around.
I mean, Trace did.
That's true. That's very true. Trace was there as Crow, but now he gets to be there as himself, which was pretty phenomenal.
What did you think about the Mads riffing of I Accuse My Parents?
Hilarious. They're hilarious. They're so funny. They did things that you could never have done on an actual episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000. I mean, one of the things I noted when I was watching it was that there's a masturbation joke, there's some drunk jokes, there's weed jokes, all within the first 5 minutes of the film.
I mean, there's a joke in the episode of the MST3K episode about the zucchinis, which seems to be about marital aids.
Oh, cucumbers. But it's real sly. I was watching it, I was just like, cucumbers. Oh, Oh, is that what they're talking about? Oh.
No. And it definitely, Frank in particular, is a lot more blunt than he might have been back in the day.
Which, the format of the Mads riffing allows them to do that, right? Like they don't have to pull back from the jokes that are a little bit more silly and explicit.
Yeah. Plus, they're doing it now. This was, a year or two ago. So they can make all sorts of references to things that happened in the 80s that Frank then has to stop and explain what he's talking about.
But they also get to make riffs about things that are happening now. And there are so many times where they were making riffs where I was just like, oh, I don't know what that is. Like, what are they talking about? Like, one of the riffs that Frank makes is this your first Ashley Madison hookup? And I'm like, I don't know what Ashley Madison is. And so I looked it up and I'm like, oh my God, there's a site for married people who want to have affairs. Stop it. I didn't know about that. I learn so much sometimes by looking up the riffs. I mean, often I let you look them up for me.
That's sort of what the show here is about.
I know, but it's so awesome.
Yes, Ashley Madison had a big scandal a little while back about that sort of thing.
See, totally the kind of thing that I should know about, I guess. I mean, not like I should know about it as it affects my life, but just like, why did I not know this vast cultural reference? Because it's a really interesting one. And it's not the only one that they made throughout all of this. Like, I didn't know who Tedros was. Like, Frank makes a comment, is this guy her Tedros? And it was like, haha, there's an already dated reference. And I'm like, it's a dated reference. I don't even know. And so I had to look it up. And it's like, yeah, okay, so there's an Apple TV Plus reference. It's like, okay, I'm not going to get any of those in the future because that's just not a service I subscribe to. But gosh, I'm glad they're making them, I guess. They're doing the work, Chris. That's what I mean. They're doing the work.
I mean, as always, they're just making jokes about things that they care about.
It's true.
And Frank, is still going to watch TV. So
it's amazing how much TV he's able to watch. And remember, I think that's my problem these days. I don't remember everything I watch with the kind of intensity that both Frank and Trace do.
Yeah. I also found it really fascinating to watch the movie again with a completely new set of riffs.
Yes.
Like, I've seen this episode a bunch. I know most of the riffs pretty well. There were not a lot of surprises when I revisited it. But of course, I don't know the riffs to the Mads version. And I hadn't watched it when it first aired, so I was catching up on it. And it was just delightful to be like, wow, they really, like, they found a whole... I mean, this is the other thing, is that, like, of course, I've seen the episode a bunch of times, but Trace and Frank probably have not, right? I've watched the episode way more than they... This is a thing that they made 30-ish years ago. They don't remember it.
Sure. Yeah, they're not going back to the original episode. They went back to the movie and built new riffs from the ground up.
And I always wonder whether, Chris, the guy from Dumb Industries who produces it, or someone is sort of in the background making sure that they don't repeat a riff. You know what I mean? Oh. Just be like, oh, no, you actually, that's a joke from the show. You might want to, like that would be the kind of editorial hand that you'd want in that situation.
Yes, or at least that you don't do it too often, right? It really is okay to reference a joke for those people who are going to remember it so they can all be like, ooh, you're referencing something you've done before. But I mean, do it in a way that's acknowledging that you're referencing something that's been done before.
Yeah, you can sometimes do that. I don't know. There was one joke that I think was basically the same joke as the first time around, and that's fine. It didn't feel like it was pandering or anything like their fan service or anything. But and that's okay. It was a very simple joke. It was the obvious joke to make, perhaps. It's fine. They're not being graded on that. It was a delightful riff, and I thoroughly recommend it for people who like this episode. There's one other thing I want to talk about real quick. So Jimmy accuses his parents.
Sort of. I mean, he kind of says it, and then he tells his story, and then at the end, he says it again. But does he really provide convincing argument?
Well, yeah, that's sort of what I'm thinking. I'm not a parent, and I don't play one on TV, but I know a lot of people who are parents. You're one of them. I also know a lot of people who had parents or have parents, and some of those parents are great, but some of those parents are bad, and some of them are very bad, much worse than Jimmy's parents. Bad parents are out there, and they can really mess up their kids' lives, and that's a real thing. But I can't help but notice, as a relatively outside observer who's never had kids of my own, that it seems like society doesn't really. Society wants perfect parents, and nobody's perfect, so it's always going to accuse parents of not being good parents, right? They simply can't do good enough. So, like, no matter what you do,
you're doing
you
it
are
wrong.
not doing enough. You're doing it wrong. You're going to kill your child. And it's going to be a menace to society because of the choices you made. So it just feels like parents are living under a cloud of constant accusation. And this movie, I know it's not, but it does feel like the beginning of that.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, I entirely agree that for a lot, particularly when you're a brand new parent, like you're trying to pay attention to parent talk, right? So that you can figure out how to do this thing with infants. Because even though you're not a parent, Chris, you have interacted with a lot of children, but you probably haven't had to be a primary caregiver for an infant, which is a really different thing. And there's lots of decisions that have to happen around that. Like, are you going to use disposable diapers or are you going to use cloth diapers? Are you going to breastfeed or are you going to bottle feed? Are you going to have them sleep in your bed or are you going to be cradle training them from the very beginning? And like all of these have huge debates around them that if you choose one of them, you're doing it wrong. And there's somebody who's going to like turn up their judgy little nose at you, no matter which way you went, right?
Exactly.
Like, no matter what choice you made, if it was the right choice for you, there will be somebody who judges you for doing it wrong. And it makes sense around infants that there isn't a frame of reference for people who haven't gone through like raising kids from infants. But even how do I parent a teenager?
Yeah.
Many people feel like they can have an opinion about how to raise a teenager because they interact with teenagers. So they have some context for making some comments.
And they remember being a teenager, I suppose.
It's true, which you don't remember being an infant. It's true. Although there's a lot of people who build whole psychologies on like, oh, you weren't breastfed? Well, all of these things are because of that. And it's like, wow, really? Really? I mean, I'm no psychiatrist, I'm no psychologist, but that seems real harsh, buddies.
I also feel like it's a lot easier to accuse parents than it is to accuse children or teenagers or other forces in society. The parents are sort of very proximate and very accusable in a sense.
Yes, and parents are adults and can make more thoughtful choices about how they're going to interact with their kids, as opposed to children who don't.
So while I don't want to say that, like, there aren't parents who break the law and do things that are very,
Sure.
very, very bad,
Sure.
that seems like a categorical difference from what's going on in this movie, where I would agree these parents are not great parents and maybe they shouldn't have had kids in the first place if they didn't want to raise them. Fine, sure. But, like, he doesn't successfully accuse his parents, really. There seem to be so many other things that are going on that it's frustrating. And it just plays into a lot of social things that I find very frustrating. But, you know, so it goes.
Yeah. I mean, especially because these parents seem real neglectful. They seem real self-focused. They really just want to hand their teenager money and have their teenager go out and do teenager things, right? Which, to a certain extent, developmentally, that's kind of what you want. You know, you want your kid to start expressing independence, right? You want your kid to be beginning to find fulfillment outside of the very close-knit family circle. That's important. It's important for that to begin to happen as your kid grows up to be an adult. And, you know, I mean, I don't think that's what these parents are intentionally doing. Like, Jimmy, it's time for you to find some friends of your own. Mama can't hang out with you all the time.
I mean, there is that. When was the first time that your parents weren't home for your birthday?
Oh.
Was it not till you went to college?
Probably. My birthday's in the summer. So quite honestly, my parents might have had to work on my birthday, but I would have seen them that evening. I guess There was a time between my junior year of high school and my senior year of high school where I got to go on like a 2-week trip to Europe with my French class, right? Like super awesome. It was really wonderful and a privilege to be able to do. And I think I was there over my birthday. So that might have been the first time, but not because they weren't supporting me doing something I really wanted to do, like they were.
It was, for me, it was my 18th birthday, actually, just like Jimmy. And it was because they were going to a wedding, which is a reasonable thing to do. And I think my birthday was happening on a weekend. I don't know. I'll have to check that up later. But either way, it was fine. Like, it was a very reasonable thing. And they were very, they were like, we're going to miss your birthday, and I apologize for that. And it's like it was not part of a pattern
but
of
you
abuse.
could come to this wedding, Chris. Don't you want to come to this wedding of people you barely know for your birthday?
Well, exactly, except I couldn't. Like, I wasn't invited to the wedding. There was no way. We did not have enough money for me to be able to go to the wedding in Arizona across the country from us.
Fair enough, yes.
And I also, what did I care? But yeah, Jimmy's parents may have been pushing this a little bit earlier if he was, making breakfast for himself as a kid. But on the other hand, that's fine. Kids can learn how to make breakfast. It's not that hard.
Yeah. There are plenty of now adults I know who tell stories about growing up in New York City and being 6 or 7 and having to basically ride the subway into school, go to their second grade classroom, and they had to manage that entire thing themselves because their parents had very early morning jobs and weren't even going to be there when they were waking up and getting ready for school. So, and not because their parents were being purposefully neglectful, but because by necessity of supporting the household, they couldn't be there during that time. It's a privilege, really, to be a parent who can be there for all of their moments for their kids.
Jimmy, stop accusing your parents.
Hey, everybody, it's time for the Shallow 13.
It's time for the Shallow 13. 13 slightly overcooked hamburgers offering salvation with a side of fries for today's experiment, I Accuse My Parents. Go, Charlotte, go!
Let's start with some familiar faces. I Accuse My Parents was directed by Sam Newfield, who did not direct Jungle Goddess, whatever Joel says, but he did direct Lost Continent, The Mad Monster, and Radar Secret Service, which is frankly enough.
He also directed The Terror of Tiny Town, a 1938 Western with a cast of about 60 actors who had an average height of around 3 foot 8 inches, or 112 centimeters. Many of these actors would also have roles in The Wizard of Oz. The Terror of Tiny Town is often considered one of the worst films ever made.
Kitty is played by Mary Beth Hughes, who you might remember from Last of the Wild Horses, where she played Remedy's daughter, Terry. They must have cut her musical numbers from that episode.
And Mean Mr. Blake is played by character actor George Meeker, who, as the riffs alluded to, played a bad guy in a Superman serial, but who is also in some well-regarded movies, such as the beloved Jimmy Stewart movie, It's a Wonderful World? Oh, A few years before It's a Wonderful Life, Jimmy Stewart made a movie called It's a Wonderful World.
What a wonderful coincidence. Anyway, yes, Meeker also had a role in the 1949 film Omu Omu, the Shark God, for all you Omu Omu, the Shark God fans out there.
Oh, and the songs in this movie were written by the team of Jay Livingston and Ray Evans, who would go on to write Mona Lisa, made famous by Nat King Cole, and Que Sera Sera, made famous by Doris Day. Wow, Que Sera Sera is a really great song.
I agree. In addition to those pop hits, they also wrote a few classic TV theme songs, including the themes to Mr. Ed, classic, and the theme to Dun 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 Bonanza, my favorite!
Okay, we're not going to be able to top that, so let's look at a few of the riffs. During the short, we see footage of a machine breaking up the soil, and Crow says,
Harrowing, isn't it? Harrowing farmer joke.
And then planting.
Right, so that machine that's breaking up the soil is called a harrow. The film actually mentions that a little bit earlier, but you might have missed it. And the act of breaking up the soil like that is called harrowing. And by metaphorical extension, something is harrowing if it tears us up emotionally. But a lot of us non-farmers only see the world through a haze of metaphor or something.
When the title screen for I Accuse My Parents appears, Crow says,
The John Bradshaw Story.
John Bradshaw was the author of several self-help books and the host of self-help TV shows in the 80s and 90s. While he didn't invent the concept, he helped popularize the idea of a wounded inner child.
As Jimmy measures Kitty's foot, Crow quips,
Brannick. Da-da-da-da.
Okay, here we go. That fun tool that gets used to measure feet for shoes is called a Brannick device, named after its inventor, Charles Brannick. It was invented in the 1920s. Eventually, the Brannick device would measure three things: the foot length from heel to toe, the arch length from heel to the ball of your foot, and the foot width.
The foot length determines your shoe size. Each unit of shoe size is separated by 1/3 of an inch, and women's shoe sizes are offset by 1. So a man's 6 is a woman's 7, and both are 9 1/3 inches long, though manufacturers aren't always consistent with sizing. The width is on a completely separate scale, from 4A at the narrowest to 6E and beyond, with each step equaling 3/16 of an inch.
Which seems ridiculous, but I guess it seems to work, and the other systems used in Europe or Asia are just as ridiculous. Instead of being based on a unit of 1/3 of an inch, aka a barleycorn, Europe bases everything off of 2/3 of a centimeter, aka a Paris point. Whatever, at least they don't gender shoe sizes in Europe.
Anyway, the other half of that riff is what Crow sings at the end, the opening notes to the theme song for TV detective show Mannix, starring Mike Touch Connors from Swamp Diamonds as Detective Joe Mannix, which kind of sounds like Brannick a little, don't you think?
Sure, and that's time. Well, Charlotte, I got to talk your ear off about a few of the things that struck me about this episode. What did you want to bring up?
Well, the first thing that I want to bring up is something I'm super excited to bring up because a while ago you told me that Frank had a book and that book had just had an audio version drop. But at the time, the episode that we were talking about wasn't one of the movies that he talked about inside of the book. And now we're finally at a movie that is in it. So we can talk about Frank's book, which is 25 Mystery Science Theater 3000 films that changed my life in no way whatsoever.
Yes. The book itself came out in 2016, but the audiobook just dropped earlier this year. And I'd read the book before, but I was happy to get to hear what it sounds like when Frank reads it aloud.
Oh, so good. So you listened to it as well, right?
I dipped into it. I didn't listen to the entire thing. I didn't have enough time, but I will go back and listen to more of it because it is, I found it a lot of fun to hear Frank narrate his book. What did you think of it?
The book is so delightful and so much fun. And I'm so glad that I listened to it in the voice of Frank Conniff because it's like an infectious rhythm as he's starting to talk about this because his humor as he is talking is so dry. And it's just like his rhythm and the way that he inflects as he's going through all of this is pretty dry and just relentless as he's talking about all of these movies. And I just can't imagine reading it and not having his voice inside of my head because Frank is so distinctive. Did you hear his voice when you were reading it on paper the first time?
I did, I suppose, but it definitely is far better when his voice sort of, and I mean this in the best possible way, barrels down at you like a semi coming down the highway that's lost its brakes. It's
yes!
Terrific. He just tears through these bits. They hit harder, I think, hearing them in his voice than they did reading it on the page.
I can imagine that is the case because it is this is exactly what you would expect his book to sound like. It is so much in his voice. And I appreciate he has a bit at the end of nearly all of the chapters from the FBI Obscure Reference Task Force, where he does what we do. He goes and he looks at one of the things that he wrote inside of the chapter and explains where it came from and what it is.
Yes, the FBI, in this case, the Federal Bureau of Incoherence, which is a lot of fun. I also think it's a bit like this show in the sense that when I first read it, I was kind of reading it in order to figure out what he had to say about the movies. He doesn't have a lot to say about the movies. They didn't really change his life at all.
As the title suggests.
But he does use the movies to spin off and talk about all kinds of other things he finds interesting, which is, sort of what we do as well.
I also have the feeling like some of the things that he brings up in the chapters about the movies are riffs that he wanted to get into the episode that didn't get into the episode. So it's on the cutting room floor for him. And he's bringing it up now, damn it, because he can. It's great.
So one of the lovely things about the chapter he did on I Accuse My Parents is that he talks about his parents.
Yeah, it was actually super sweet and emotionally touching to have him talk about his parents inside of this chapter, because he talks about how he remembers them as like black and white movies, because that's the visualization of the memory that he has, because that's how he's seen his parents most often inside of his adult years. And it's like, oh my gosh, so many of my memories of my childhood are based on a photograph that my parents took, or a photograph that somebody else took, or a short home movie. And it's really interesting to think that that's going to be what sparks remembrances of your childhood.
Yes, he also accuses them of nothing less than being awesome.
Yes. I believe he refers to his mother as a fucking badass. And it's like, yes, even though, like, by most standards, like, she was a housewife and a mother, and she, like, dealt with her mental illness. Like, that alone makes somebody fucking badass. But most of the time when we think of badass women, we don't think of women who are housewives and mothers. And guess what? You are. If you're a housewife and a mother, you are a badass.
Putting up with all these people accusing you.
Yeah, they have no right. And I appreciate that, like, part of what he talks about is not that his parents were perfect. He doesn't talk about having perfect parents and a perfect home life.
No, he's not like Jimmy. He's not a liar.
Exactly. He has a much more nuanced view of who his parents were. And I really appreciate that, because I think sometimes we tend to go to the extremes when we're talking about our parents, or when we're thinking about bad movies, we go to the extremes about them. And every time he's approaching one of these movies, he's approaching it from a sense of, like, I don't know, like having a more nuanced look at what's going on. I did want to bring up something else besides Frank Conniff and the Mads and all that. There's a moment in the movie that just, like, sparked a random memory from my childhood. Like, this is really random, Chris.
Okay.
So there's a part in the movie where Jimmy is he's been told by Mr. Blake that he has to leave town, right? And Mr. Blake has sent people to beat him up, so he knows he really needs to leave town, right? And he runs home and he writes his parents a note, and then he goes up into his room and he starts packing his suitcase. And there's a riff about him, like, packing random things, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I think Crow at some point has him saying, "I'm going to run away. I've got peanut butter and underwear, and that's all I need."
I'm just going to run away. I got peanut butter and underwear, and that's all I need.
Which totally feels like it's coming straight out of The Jerk or something, right? But that's not what came to my mind. When I was hearing this riff, I was thinking about a book that I read when I was a child about a little girl running away because she got a baby sister and her parents weren't paying attention to her anymore.
Well, that's reasonable. I mean, she probably did the right thing. It was probably over.
I mean, it's basically what Jimmy was doing, except Jimmy didn't have a little sister. It was the booze that distracted his parents from him. Same story. Not really. What was sparked into my memory when I was watching this scene was that there was a childhood book about a little girl named Frances, only she wasn't a girl. She was like a badger, and she had a family, and she tried walking around the house making a lot of noise, and her parents were like, you should be more quiet. And she's like, well, I'm going to run away then. And so she like packs a knapsack with some really weird stuff, and she goes and she runs away underneath of the dining room table.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so she sits there and she like sings her little songs, and then her parents talk about like how much they miss her, and then she decides to run away. Like that's the whole gist of the story, and that was what I remembered was like, oh, running. Like I remember that story about a little girl running away, and so I had to go get it out of the library so I could read it again.
Okay.
The book is called A Baby Sister for Frances.
Uh-huh.
And Frances is a badger, and she has a mother and a father badger, and she has a brand new little baby sister. The author is Russell Hoban, and his wife Lillian does the pictures for it. And the pictures are like super, super precious little things of this badger family. They're so cute.
I'm looking it up because I didn't grow up reading these, so I have not read this before, but they do look very cute. I agree.
Yeah, very cute. I'm surprised. Well, I mean, I guess I'm torn as to like, this is a book that I remember so prominently from my childhood, and you and I were the same age, so like the same books would have been available to us. And like looking at Russell Hoban's life, like he was a Northeasterner, so like my parents didn't know about him because he was some weirdo Californian from Santa Cruz, right? Like,
Sure.
He was from your neck of the woods. But I think that my mom would have encouraged me to read this book because I have a little sister.
That's very possible. That's true.
Right. And I would have been like, I mean, I was 2 when my sister was born, but I was probably reading this when I was like 4 and going to preschool, right? And my mom would have been like this mom where she had to prioritize taking care of an infant or a toddler over her slightly older kid.
So when you returned to the Frances book about getting a little baby sister, did it hit different this time now that you're reading it as a full-on grown-up?
Partially. I mean, I have only one kid, so I never had to deal with the rivalry of him having to deal with having a younger sibling. And so much of what I remember from this book is Frances reacting to no longer being the center of her parents' attention. And that's not something as a parent that I've had to deal a whole bunch with because my kid is an only child. He doesn't have to share the attention of parents like I did when I was growing up. But there are things that just, like, I wouldn't have thought I would have remembered as succinct, like as clearly from my childhood. There's a part in the book where Frances goes into her bedroom and she has a whole bunch of, gravel just sitting in a drawer somewhere because who doesn't do that? And she puts it in an empty coffee can and she shakes it and walks all around the house and she sings really, really loudly. And I remember as a kid going, here we go marching, rattly bang. And I'm like, oh my God. That's how I sang it when I was like 4.
You remember that there's gravel in the junk drawer during the invention exchange, right? There's a handful of gravel that might be agate.
Exactly, but that's the junk drawer in the kitchen. That's not the drawer inside of a kid's bedroom. But I guess kids have junk drawers too.
I'm just saying the book might have been on their minds.
Well, Chris, you got to bring a whole bunch of things up. I got to bring a whole bunch of things up that this movie reminded me of. And I mean, we haven't accused our parents. I assume that we won't. But I'm sure that you have one final factoid to round us all up.
Yes, in addition to that fun little song about being happy in your work.
Are you happy in your work?
Yeah. Not sure how you keep doing that, but good on you. There's also another part of this experiment which lives rent-free in my head, which is the repeated cries of liar, liar, liar,
Liar, liar, liar.
Yes, they're so effective with that.
So like that's just naturally what I think whenever I want to accuse someone of being a liar, whether they're my parents or not.
Sure. Yes.
Do you know what that's a reference to?
I didn't realize it was a reference to something, so no.
It is a reference to the song Liar, which became a top 10 hit by Three Dog Night in 1971.
You mean the people who think 1 is the loneliest number and Jeremiah was a bullfrog, Three Dog Night?
Yes.
Okay.
Those 3 dogs that night, them.
It's a 3-dog night. Like you saw one dog and you saw a second dog, but then when that third one comes along, this is a 3-dog night.
1 dog is happenstance. 2 dogs is coincidence. 3 dogs is enemy action.
That's a movement. And imagine if they were singing it in harmony.
Exactly. Anyway, we'll have a link to that song in the show notes. But yes, liar, 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 liar.
I kind of want a cover by Queen.
Too late.
I know. If you've been affected by the issues on this show, if you're a parent accused of someone else's crime, or if you'd like to ask us anything, get in touch with us. Our email is info@itsjustashow.com, and we're on Blue Sky, and we would love to hear from you. This show is made possible by listeners like you, and like our randomly selected supporter, Patrick. Thank you, Patrick. For about $1 an episode, you can be like Patrick and help us research and record this show. You can join us in a friendly Discord, and you can listen to all our super fan bonus bits. Find out more at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow. If you want to follow up on anything that was mentioned today, you'll find links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/181. Chris, I'm sure the courtroom drama continues inside of our next episode. What is it?
Well, I don't know if the courtroom drama is going to continue, but we will learn a thing or two as we watch Season 5, Episode 20, Radar Secret Service, with the short Last Clear Chance.
Oh my, I don't have any memory of this episode. Is there something that you can remind me of that'll help me to think about it?
It's got radar, and it's got bad drivers.
Oh, so you're telling me it's a secret. You're not going to tell me what I need to know to remember this episode.
No, I you don't understand. It's got so much radar.
So it'll be like The Hunt for Red October, but without Tim Curry.
Yeah, and if the police were the submarine.
Nice. Oh, this is exciting already, I can tell.
So, get ready for a big info dump about radar next time around, I guess. But until then...
Can I do a riff from the Mads, or does it have to be from the episode?
We're in uncharted territory here.
Okay, I got it. It's going to be one from the movie.
Okay.
As long as I talk real fast and do what he says, I'm going to be okay.
The kiss way to the promised land? Take it away, Theme Squad. Liar, liar, liar. Liar, liar, liar. Liar, liar, liar.
If I was going to do one from the Mads, the one that I would have done, you can wash that window, Jimmy, but you'll never wash away original sin.